Eh?
Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. Yes, apologies if you've been waiting a couple of minutes. We are now awaiting another couple of contributors from our friends at Celtic Down Under. I'm Paul John Dykes, and I am joined at the moment by Kevin McCluskey. Sean Connolly and Liam Carrigan will be joining us. We are looking ahead to St Johnstone against Celtic. And obviously the first thing on everybody's mind at the moment, Kevin McCluskey, is the team lineup. Something that you predicted this morning on the Acsom.net blog, and you got it spot on. Talk us through it.
Aye, well, it wasn't so much of a prediction. I was on the phone to Ange this morning and he gave me the heads up. So I got it straight from the horse's mouth.
Are you sure it was
If
Declan
only.
you were on the phone to?
Well, don't like to give my true source away, but yes, it's actually Declan.
He's got the bat phone to Ange Postecoglou. But you predicted this. You predicted 1-11 as it stands. So talk us through this team, and what a bench as well. Strong bench.
Yeah. Well, as has been highlighted to me already on Twitter and in our Acsom chat as well, it was probably the easiest one to get right. So yeah, the broken clock can get it right at least twice a day, and I've managed to get it right just now. But I think it actually was a fairly easy team to predict because of the way that we've been playing over the last few weeks. I don't see there being much of a need to go and change things around and kind of reinvent the wheel, make changes and bring players in. We've been playing a really kind of solid style of football that's been working. The defence, for me, absolutely picks itself going forward. Johnson's come in and been pretty much a revelation for me at right back. He's come and slotted in as if he's been there for the season, really, so far. Carter Vickers and Starfelt is, without doubt, the first choice centre-back pairing. I think there is a stat going around. They haven't lost a game when they've started together, so that's just incredible given the amount of games that they've played together. And Taylor, for me, is up there as a candidate for Player of the Season. So again, unless one of those 4 or 5, if you include Joe Hart, is injured, you don't drop them at the moment. You go with that strongest back line. It gives you that solid foundation to build from. Into midfield, we've got McGregor, Hatate, and Moy. Again, for me right now, that is just the best of the midfield from 3 that we've got. Callum McGregor's, I know Ange has spoken about no one being undroppable in the team. I think Callum's probably the exception to that rule. For me, he is undroppable. He's the captain. I think Dan said it on Friday. He just brings that calmness and composure to the midfield. Yeah. Every time he gets the ball, you're assured that what he's doing with it is going to be the right move. So he's an absolute stick-on to play every week. Hatate's just... He is the player that can frustrate at times because, he's got all the ability in the world and what he tries doesn't always come off. But he's there every time to try again and again. And when it does come off, boy, does it come off for him. He's the type of player that you need that in the midfield. Someone that is just prepared to take a risk and do something. So for me, again, has to be a starter. The big question then in the midfield is who becomes the +1 alongside those two. And Aaron Moy, I think, completely deserves it because he's been in great form since he's come back from the World Cup. I was one of the folks I had a few doubts about him pre-World Cup, but we spoke about it before. He's gone out there with something to prove, and it wasn't just to prove to his national team, it was to prove to his club team that he was good enough to come back and play. And he's got a phenomenal record. I think it was something like 5 goals, 2 assists in the 11 appearances he's made since the World Cup. He's really stepped up his performance and deserves to be in the team. I thought O'Reilly did well when he came back in against Livy on Wednesday. Set up the goal, obviously, the third one. But Moy's the man who's been performing pretty much week in, week out. And if you're going for a strongest 3, for me, he comes in and he just kind of helps control and solidify the midfield. And then up front today, we've got Jota, Maeda, Kyogo. Kyogo, again, I think picks himself. He's the leading centre forward that we've got. Maeda, I think, is perfect for these games. He's pretty much perfect for any game in Scotland because of the way he likes to harass the defences and stretch them. And he's the one that creates the space for others to go in and play. And who better to go in and play than Jota, because he is our most technically gifted footballer and that one player that if things aren't going right and the ball lands at his feet in the last minute, you just think he'll make something happen. he's got that kind of X factor about him. So you'd play him from the start. And as you touched upon as well, see if it's not working. Just look at that bench. You've got Haksabanovic to come off there, who's got something to prove because he's hardly featured since the World Cup. Abada is due a big performance, I think. As much as I love him, he hasn't really hit his heights in the last month or so. So he's due as a big performance. You've got James Forrest, who usually puts in a performance against against St Johnstone, and at these kind of grounds and these kind of games. You've got O, who's wanting to come on and make an impression. There's so many options there that you can turn to that if starting 11 isn't working, someone will come off the bench and make it work for us. So it's for me, really strong first team, but a really strong bench as well. That just gives you so much confidence going into every game.
Absolutely. Welcome to the show, guys. Sorry for the late shout. That was my fault. I'm going to take that one on the chin. It's just occurred to me, though, we're international, we're continental. I'm Paul John Dykes, and I'm broadcasting from Dalkeith. You've got Kevin McCluskey broadcasting from Budapest. Am I right? In Hungary?
Yeah, right. Yes. Yep.
Liam, where are you in Japan?
Nagano, a couple hours north of Tokyo.
And then we've got Sean. Are you in Perth, Sean?
Yep, West Coast.
West Coast, Perth in Australia. Yeah, absolutely. So we're international, we're continental. And I'm also going to ask you, Liam, is that Escape to Victory? Is that what that top is?
Yes, it is the Sylvester Stallone goalie top.
Oh, yes.
The greatest goalkeeper of all time, so why not,
Love it. Love it, honestly. Even with the colour scheme, I think you pull it off.
Aye.
I think you pull it off. We're just saying when you guys finally got the call from me there this afternoon, as it is where I am, that Kevin predicted the team this morning in the Acsom blog, and he got it absolutely spot on. And Jungle Lion actually comes in and asks the question, arguably Celtic's strongest team today. Now, I know that when we normally talk about that, people say there isn't such a thing, and just fluids, all this kind of stuff, Sean. But eventually, in your own mind, you have what you think is the strongest 11. I think that there's maybe one or two in that team that some people might disagree with. But where are you with that starting 11 today? Is that your strongest, or certainly at the moment, is that your strongest?
Oh, 100% based on form. Shout to Kevin, I predicted the exact same team. I'd say there's more talented players on the bench, but if you're going by form, that is absolutely the strongest team. I personally think Haksabanovic might have a little bit more in the bank about him than someone like Maeda, even though I definitely think Maeda is up there with Moy as our best player over the last 6 weeks. So there's no chance that you kind of rotate there. And for some reason, I'd messaged my brother the starting lineup, and he reckoned that he'd rather have Turnbull than Moy. I don't know where he's getting that from. But maybe he's kind of thinking of a kind of Scottish bias, whereas we kind of need these Scottish-based players, and Turnbull's got 18 months left in his contract, so I don't know if he's thinking more long-term in that one. But I don't know how you can, on current form, have Turnbull ahead of Moy.
No, you're right. I actually do think that when Turnbull's come in 3 or 4 times in the last month or so, he's done pretty well, but not to the degree, Liam, that he's going to displace someone like Aaron Moy. I don't think, anyway. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know if there is such a thing as an undroppable player in an Ange team, but Aaron Moy's as close to it as you can get at the moment. He's unplayable right now, and I'm quite. I didn't go to the trouble of predicting a team today because, well, quite frankly, I was busy. It's the midfield's exactly as I would want it. The front line is good. Sean makes a good point. Haksabanovic might be a more, should I say, naturally gifted footballer than Maeda, but I think Maeda's more effective for this kind of match, where it's going to be about running the defence into the ground, stretching that deep-seated defence that we're going to have to try and break down. And I think Maeda with his pace and Jota with his trickery, and I assume the two of them are going to switch wings intermittently throughout the game as well. Mm-hmm. That is just going to stretch that defence all over the place, which leads to spaces that Kyogo loves to get into for a couple of goals, hopefully. Yeah,
for sure. I'm really keen to bring in some of these comments. I mean, I'm in sunny Dalkeith, but Ewan Boy Martin is in Porta del Carmen in Lanzarote. But you will find a bar somewhere to watch a Celtic game. Ewan, and I hope you enjoy it, my friend. Jungle Lion, morning from Bank Holiday Dublin. Not too early for a beer either. Kevin McCluskey, is it too early for a beer where you are?
Never too early for a beer here, Paul. We've got very, very laxed regulations on our alcohol consumption, so it's never too early.
Okay.
Although I
not a
have
bad
abstained.
answer.
I have abstained for the show.
For the show, absolutely. But
Yes.
Sean and Liam, you are sitting, it's night time where you guys
Oh,
are,
yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah,
You
it's
can have a
7:30.
beer.
Yeah, definitely. It's Sunday night though, so just need to watch it.
5 classes tomorrow for me. I'm also a teacher, so no beer tonight, I'm afraid.
Oh dear. Right,
Yeah.
Joe Hamilton. Hello, troops. Austria calling. What a team today. I agree with that. It is a fantastic side. And Magnet 67, morning Acsom team. This will be a tough game, but an early goal, dictate the rhythm, pace, and we win 3-0, reckons Magnet 67. And Jason is coming from Wee Scotland in Corby down south, 3-0 today, Jason. Yeah, absolutely. I've heard all about, never been to Corby yet, but I'm pretty sure an Acsom event would probably work down there. So give us a shout if you want us to come down. The latest one is with Alan Thompson, one of the boys from Seville. He will be joining us in April. And it's been updated this morning that Danny McGrain, there are only 3 tickets left to come and see Danny in March at Gracie's in Glasgow. If you buy a ticket, you go into a prize draw. You win the original shirt of what Sean is wearing. You're wearing the Nike kind of revisiting of the lime green shirt. There it is. You will win a replica of the original signed by Danny. That will be sent out before the gig takes place. There'll be other prizes on the night, of course. 3 tickets. Can we punt them before the end of today's match coverage? I think we probably can. Now, I want to look at some of the things that have happened during the week, obviously, that bleeds into the weekend's action. And I'll start with yourself, Sean. Giakoumakis, the saga drags on. I remember being asked in December, what's something that if I could, I would cancel? And my answer to that was football players' social media accounts. And at that time, he had already given us the wee egg timer emoji. Am I the only person that still calls them emoticons? Probably. Right, so it's an emoji. But since then, it's continued, and it's even came up in a press conference with a man himself, Ange Postecoglou, who, tongue-in-cheek, but making his point brilliantly, says that obviously you'll probably hear first on Instagram what happens with Giakoumakis. What do you make of all this? It's a bit, it's a bit of a bitter end to a fairly decent 18 months for Giakoumakis.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it kind of shows what happens differently depending on the age profile of the player that you sign. Because if this is, say, O has the same impact as Giakoumakis did, in 18 months down the line, we're not expecting him to go to USA for 4.5 million. We're expecting him to go to Wolves or Southampton for 20 million for the same level of player. I don't know if that's a degree of ageism or just realism in football. I always think back to some of the players, like I believe Taribo West was about 7 years younger than he actually was recorded as being back in the day. Some of these players, I don't know, it's a funny one, but yeah, I would have liked him stay. I'd like to have the known entity for this run-in, but it's certainly good business. We've come out this transfer window and profit, whether no matter what happens with Giakoumakis. We've made all our money from the Ivanovic sale.
Yeah.
And there's some other teams just go and spend £330 million on a handful of players, just pissing all over financial fair play. It's a bit of a weird world, this football.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Celtic are, keeping their own counsel when it comes to that, doing their business wisely. Liam, Giakoumakis, he came into the side, and I remember the first few games, even though he was scoring goals. I seen him against Alloa and Hearts, and I wasn't convinced. I thought he had a poor first touch. I thought there was a limit to this player. When did my mind change on that? Well, certainly it might not have been this particular game, but by the time we beat Rangers 3-0 at Celtic Park, I was a massive Giakoumakis fan. But it's just kind of taken a wee downward turn, hasn't it? And this whole social media thing, for me, is a nonsense. And I'm certainly looking at Postecoglou thinking he can't be doing all that kind of nonsense, can he? All that drama.
No. I mean, I think there's you can compare two direct scenarios here and contrast them. How did Moritz Jens handle leaving Celtic? It was a thank you very much. Been an honour to be here. I'm happy to have played my part on the next stage of my career. He was grateful for the chance. He realised, as I think Giakoumakis does now, that it's not necessarily a slight on him. The guys in front of him are just better. And it's the same with Giakoumakis at the moment. Kyogo is proven to be a better, more effective goal scorer than Giakoumakis. Based on his pedigree and his form going into Celtic, will develop probably into a better player than Giakoumakis. Maeda, when he plays as a striker, I think is on a par with Giakoumakis. Sometimes you just have to realise, look, if I want to play first team football, I'm going to have to go elsewhere. There's no need to be a wee greeting-faced Wayne about it,
You mentioned Jens, but even Abelgar, he left with a bit of dignity, Kevin, social media, I remember, I think it was last season, I said that if it was possible, I'd love our players not to have it. I'd love there to be a social media manager who deals with all that kind of stuff for each individual player. Because it does cause a lot of problems. I mean, Lee Griffiths, different type of issue, but I remember saying after the Lee Griffiths situation, just ban the guys for using it. Have a social media manager to deal with all the players' social media accounts, because this kind of thing happens and people might think you're overreacting, but for a club like Celtic, it's just unprofessional and it's drama we don't need, Kev.
Yeah, it is. And it's the kind of thing they can call it was one innocuous tweet or like of something, but the kind of ramifications of it throughout the squad could be really detrimental depending on what it is that's going on. We've even seen with Matt O'Reilly and his little post to Juranovic, I think, well done on the move and you deserve it. And people are reading into that like, oh, he deserves to play at a bigger level as a Union, a bigger club. And it's just I think with something like that, I thought it was a fairly standard kind of comment, well done, you've earned your move, good on you. But if you want to read into that in a different way and make trouble from it, you can. So if you've got someone that's there, social media manager vetting what goes out, these things don't happen. If you do put a club ban on social media, then that stops it as well. But it's definitely something it's in the modern game, and it's something that as a club we probably need to work on and deal on how we want to approach it. You've got to give players a bit of freedom to express themselves. You don't want to become too totalitarian in how you approach it. But at the same time, you've got to protect the kind of harmony and balance in the team. So anything that you can do to protect that has got to be considered.
Yeah, for sure. I'm loving the fact that, from four corners of the Acsom screen, we are broadcasting from four corners of the planet. It shows you the global appeal of Celtic. But tell us a wee bit, Sean, about Celtic Down Under. Tell us about the broadcast and what you guys are doing when you broadcast and where we can find you as well.
Up to now, we've primarily had our flagship on a Wednesday show. I've been doing a kind of Monday, Tuesday extra weekend roundup, which is just 10 minutes long. But we're actually looking to expand even beyond that and do an extra show each week. We've just added a few new contributors today, in fact. So we should be seeing some changes coming up. Not significant, but certainly new faces going forward if anyone would like to jump in and take part.
Absolutely. It's always good to keep the show fresh. FS, Moy is the best midfielder in the country on present form. He's been absolutely phenomenal since the World Cup. And as has, I think, Kyogo, who Ange stood up for fairly recently in a press conference, where he said Liam Kyogo's form hadn't really dipped since he came in. That was fair enough. I love to see McGafford standing up for his players. But when you look at his record, 21 goals this season. Last week I was talking about the players who had scored 40 in a season, 40 or more goals. That might be beyond him this season, but he's heading towards 30, which is incredible. But I mean, I tend to agree with Ange. Even when he's played badly and he's missed chances, he has created. He's always a creator and he's always there. The work ethic's unbelievable from him. But he is heading towards 30. And again, you go back to Giakoumakis. What can Giakoumakis complain about there?
No, that's it. It's that you have the top goal scorer and on current form the best striker in the country ahead of you. I really don't. No other player in Scotland at the moment would be able to displace Kyogo from that front line. I don't think. And the other interesting side to it is, I'm going to say something which might get me charged with heresy here, but back when I was a season ticket holder in the early 2000s, there were several games where Henrik Larsson would not be playing well, maybe for 80 minutes, but in those other 10 minutes he would score a hat-trick, so it wouldn't matter, you know. Strikers are like that sometimes. They have patches where they don't play well, but as long as they're still scoring, it really doesn't matter. And I think Kyogo is like that. You know, has he had moments this season where his form's dipped a wee bit? Aye, maybe. But he's still been scoring the goals and we've still been winning. So as long as that doesn't change, there's no issue.
No, you're right. I've got an ongoing, long-standing project with regards to Celtic's archive VHS videotapes, which are going to eventually end up on the Acsom channel, not in their entirety. We've got to watch copyright. You can get away with doing this with a review legislation in mind. So when I'm looking back on some of these old games with Henrik Larsson and I'm watching full live 90 minutes that have been recorded off the telly, Liam, I'm pretty sure I'll be sitting there going, Henrik's having a stinker today, you know. But in time, because of his legendary status, he obviously never had a bad game. Neither did Jimmy Johnstone or Pele. When we're looking at Kyogo, Kevin McCluskey, again, you know, he was being protected to a degree by Ange, and I love that because he's also protected Starfelt recently in some of the comments that he's made. But Kyogo is having a fantastic season. He'll probably still be feeling or reeling a wee bit from the, you know, the fact that he didn't get to the World Cup, Kevin. But, you know, on this forum, you wouldn't bet against him scoring 30 goals this season.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. For Ange, his comments about Kyogo and Starfelt, as you've mentioned, that's just good man management. It's absolutely excellent. He deflects any criticism away from his players, and if there's any to be had, he'll take it and shoulder it himself. But then he'll generally come back with some sort of positive about the player. And with Kyogo, it's 100% deserved. We've sat on podcasts before and at halftime in games, and we've discussed Kyogo, and we've been. He's probably the player I'd take off. You know, we'd bring on Giakoumakis for the second half, more physical player. We gave it all that. Then Kyogo would go up and score the winner, or he'd get the first goal in the second half, and he'd prove us wrong. And it's with a player like him, a lot of the kind of the positives about his game, you don't necessarily see them straight away. It's if you rewatch a game and you just watch him and his movement, it's excellent. And that's what sets him apart from any other striker in the league. He can have a 45, 60, 70-minute period where he's not really involved on the ball, but his off-the-ball movement creates the space for others to go in and play, creates the chances. It's maybe a case of he'll just have it's a one-touch pass as well, so he's not hogging the ball when he gets it, but he makes things happen. And he does get into positions to score regularly. That Aberdeen game that we watched, I think that would be the first game back after the break, and he missed 3 or 4 really good chances, but he was there to miss them. And he's there the next game to miss them as well. And then he starts scoring them again. And his record this season, domestically, has been phenomenal. It is 21 goals this season. That's a great record. And we've still got another 10, 11, 12 games, whatever it is to go. You wouldn't bet against him hitting 30.
On that forum, Sean, you look at the signing of brilliant signing. When you look at the age profile as well, you've got a player who's come in, he's hungry, he's looking to break into the team, he's got all these, you know, things that are sometimes hard to actually gauge in terms of a stat on a spreadsheet. And the outgoing striker in Giakoumakis, who's frustrated and he's, you know, 7 years older and he's maybe looking over his shoulder for a move and all this kind of stuff. But what does O have to do? He's obviously in a much better kind of frame or a state of mind, I would guess, to try and push Kyogo for a place. What does he have to do, though? Because so far he's had a couple of cameos, and I would expect at some stage for Ange to throw him in for a start, not by dropping Kyogo as such, but just to try and get some minutes in O's legs. You've been impressed with what you've seen so far with a couple of cameos?
Oh, definitely impressed, yeah. He just looks really composed and like strong, physical. He just seems to, he definitely reminds me of, I don't know, like a kind of Samaras type player. Like, I know quite a divisive player, but like he just had a really big stride. Sam asked, and like seems to kind of have that same thing so far. It's hard to tell in just 25 minutes of play, but he's definitely a confident, physical, good technical player. So will he be our number one at some point in the future? Number one choice up front? Possibly. Definitely not going to be this season. I'd be surprised, notwithstanding injury, if he starts more than 2 or 3 games for the rest of the season. I can see Kyogo starting 14 or whatever the number is if we go all the way. And just be getting the last. But the thing is, Kyogo doesn't tend to finish games. He doesn't play 90 minutes. I believe maybe the only game he played 90 minutes this year was Ibrox, unless there was a European game as well.
Right.
But he tends to come off around about an hour to 75 minutes because he does so much running. So always going to see a lot of game time. He's going to see the pitch every week, I should say, rather than a lot of game time. But I don't see him starting more than 2 or 3 games, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to his cameo, which we will undoubtedly see at some point today. Joe Brown comes in on the YouTube. I agree about Abada. He's been very poor of late. We love Haksabanovic to be let loose on St Johnstone today. The thing is, and I think this is true of Ange, is if you come in, you've really got to make an impact. And Abel Gard got a few games, didn't really make the impact, couldn't staple his place in the team, and off you trot. And Abada, when he's been coming in, Kevin, I think that he's not had that same impact that you would expect, because he's a tremendous talent. He has been since he came in. But when given that opportunity to impress, I'm not going to call him poor, but I just don't think he's had the same impact of late.
No, I think he set himself a pretty high bar with his performances last season, and he's struggled to maintain that this season, but it hasn't been helped by the fact that he's not been a regular in the starting team. And I think a player like Abada is one of those guys that needs to get a run of games before you see the best out of him. He's got ability to come on and give you that bit of an impact and change a game for sure. But to get the absolute best out of him and over a long period of time, he needs to get 3-4 games in a row. But with the way Ange runs his team, if you don't come in and you don't hit the ground running, there's someone else there who can come in and take your place. So I think that's been his major struggle. But yeah, as I said earlier on at the start, he is due as a big performance, and he seems like the kind of player that will dig deep to make sure that happens at some point. So if he gets off the bench today, he's going to give it 100%. If it doesn't come off for him, it doesn't come off for him, but it won't be through the lack of trying.
Yeah, and if that big performance is in a cup final against Rangers, then it'll be worth waiting for as well.
If that's the one he's saving it for, because he's got a wee habit of scoring against that lot. So
Precisely.
I'll be quite happy if that's when it came.
For sure. Graham Platt in Sydney can't wait for the kick-off. Hacks have been slow to get going since his last injury. He needs minutes. Yeah, I'm not writing that player off. I think he's extremely talented as well. Ewan Boys in Bar 67. Top-notch, brilliant Celtic pub. Loving it. Hopefully you enjoy the game. And Dr. Nax in Melbourne here. Looking forward to this all weekend. Well, it's great to welcome people watching Celtic and Acsom from all over the globe. We're up against St Johnstone. Liam, I'm going to come to you. How's it going to go today? What's your prediction for today?
Well, on our Wednesday show, I somewhat outrageously predicted a 6-0 win. So you know what? I'm going to stick with it. 6-0.
Stick with your guns. Kyogo hat-trick, 6-0.
Aye.
Yeah, all over it. What about yourself, Sean?
For me, the biggest thing is, are we going to keep this run of clean sheets going? I think that's 6 in a row now. I think we won't. I think the referee might have a part to play, but I think we'll win 3-1 and lose our clean sheet record, sadly.
3-1. That's a decent result at McDermott. Kevin, you predicted the team spot on. You got 11 out of 11. Let's see if you can get a prediction for the score correct. What's your thoughts on today's game?
I've never ever managed to get a score prediction right yet. So
just go with one each.
For one each. I'm going to go. I think we'll win. I think we'll win by a couple of goals, and it'll be 2-0 or 3-1. I think that's what I'm going with.
Be happy with that. I'd be happy with that.
On the fence.
Yeah, as long as we get a win. However, I've got to say, sorry for us starting a little bit late. I don't want to eat into your game time, so go away and watch the action. We'll be back at half-time. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. If you haven't done so already, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and we'll see you at half-time. Thank you to Kevin McCluskey, Sean Connolly, and Liam Carrigan for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.